Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back to yet more Warhammer 40k lore, and a special welcome to Bloodtober! Cringy, you say? Yes, I answer, but we needed a special name for this month's Blood Angels focus, and more specifically, we are going to go through all of the second founding Blood Angels successor chapters, starting today with the noble, loyal Blood Drinkers. Smiles audibly. But first, we have our returning sponsor, NordVPN, and instead of even plugging it, let me just ask you one very simple question. Why don't you have a VPN service yet? In the modern world where almost everything we do is online, whether it be our entertainment, our shopping, our communication, or general access to information, almost everything is done via the internet, even more so after the events of the last couple of years. As our reliance on the internet grows and is likely to continue growing, it therefore makes a great deal of sense to protect your data as much as possible. And NordVPN is the market leader in this field for a reason. With more than 5,100 servers spread across 60 countries and compatible with all major platforms including Windows, Android, iOS, macOS, and Linux, you will be fully protected on all of your devices. And the benefits are obvious. Not having your data stolen is probably good enough, but in addition to that, access to any and all streaming platforms wherever you want. Even if a show is not available in your location, you can simply switch your location. And perhaps the best feature, particularly for countries like mine, since NordVPN encrypts all your traffic, your internet service provider can no longer throttle your bandwidth and slow down streaming speed. That is a big one around where I live. So, if you're interested in NordVPN, do go down to the link in the description below, where you will find my URL and you can go get a 2-year plan plus 4 additional months for free with a discount with the code ARCH as seen on screen. And now, with your internet security taken care of, let's get back on with the lore. The Blood Drinkers chapter, like their second founding brethren, were formed in the early 31st millennium, as the legions were broken into smaller, less dangerous fragments of the once almighty legions. Hailing, of course, from the Blood Angels, the Blood Drinkers have a long and proud history, even more so, in fact, than many of their other second founding brethren. Indeed, in terms of pure honor and reliability, they may very well be second only to the Blood Angels chapter itself. For whilst many of Sanguinius's progeny have been known to succumb to the Curse, the Black Rage, and the Red Thirst, the Blood Drinkers have proven remarkably resistant to the Flaw. And so whilst many of the other successor chapters are often feared or outright avoided by their brethren due to the danger of their allies turning berserk in the middle of battle and turning upon friend as well as foe, the Blood Drinkers have a near uniquely positive reputation, and frequently rub shoulders with other of the finest loyalist chapters. Crimson Fists, Ultramarines, Howling Griffins, Nova Marines, and others, all considered far beyond any reproach. The Flesh Terrors and Gabriel Seth would die to have the reputation of the most honourable blood drinkers. And as for the reason for their remarkable resistance against the curse that plagues the Blood Angels, well, being a naturally humble chapter, of course, the Blood Drinkers can very rarely be drawn on this subject. But if you were to get one of them to speak of it, they would tell you the tale of the hero and the saint Holos, the saviour of the Blood Drinkers chapter. For if you can believe it, At one point, the blood drinkers suffered more heavily from the curse than even the flesh tearers. Gabriel Seth's chapter suffered from a slow erosion of their numbers, a chiseling away, as veteran battle brothers were lost more and more frequently to the ranks of the Death Company, until eventually the attrition was swifter than the rate at which they could replenish their numbers. A grinding death. The blood drinkers, however, were pushed to the very edge of destruction like that. Their doom loomed above them seemingly instantly, until at one point in the 37th millennium, the curse came upon them so rapidly that once a battle brother was fully initiated into the chapter and raised from the rank of a neophyte, the moment he received his last few modifications and augmentations, he would near instantly succumb to the Black Rage, and would have to be immediately restrained by tearful battle brothers as they saw another one of their numbers succumb before their legacy had even begun. Whereas the Flesh Tearers still had some hope, some faith in their original chapter master Nazir Ahmet and their mysterious new homeworld, the blood drinkers had been deprived of all. Even efforts to try and find a cure were being refused by the chapter council, who thought at this point that there was no salvation. The only thing the Blood Drinkers chapter could possibly hope for now was to pass on into the pages of history as quietly and as honorably as possible, praying that at the very least their final shame would remain hidden from the Imperium. But in the Blood Drinkers' darkest hour, their hero, Holos, had a dream, a vision of rescue. He had to climb to the top of Mount Calicum, a vile, treacherous peak inhabited by ferocious Xenos predators known as the Astartes, a threat even to a fully armored space marine. It was a journey he was unlikely to return from. In fact, several others had already failed to return. Holos chose to consult Reclusiarch Shanadar about his purpose and his path, and after the conversation finally decided to disobey the wishes and the express commands of the chapter council and departed on his own personal quest. Holos did not expect the climb to be easy, and in this he was most certainly not disappointed. Not only was he harried by the Astartes all the way up the mountain, but he had to face their lord and master, the Nushi of the Astartes, a creature a full 5 times the size of the average monster, already again a threat to a fully armed and armored space marine. It was a miracle that saw Holos overcome this foe that had already slain 4 others of his brothers, whose war gear was still littering the beast's nest. But upon reaching the zenith of the mountain, Holos was at death's door. His armor rent, torn, and broken. Inert, powerless, and useless, it was nothing more than a weight on him now, a burden to bear. One arm hung broken and worthless at his side, and considering the rate at which space marines regenerate, the rigidity of their bones and muscular structure, the fact that he was completely unable to use this arm speaks volumes as to the severity of the physical trauma he had suffered. But even though his body may be broken, his spirit remained iron. And even if his legs would bend and buckle beneath him, he would use his one good arm to drag himself to the summit of the mountain, where he was met by an angel. A vision of Sanguinius, to be sure, returned to Earth for this one brief moment. and it offered deliverance from the curse. If only Holos would be brave enough to take it. Several weeks later, Holos returned from the mountain. As he announced himself before the gates of the chapter's fortress monastery on their homeworld, San Guisiga, celebrations erupted. Our brother had returned. He had long been given up for dead, having been assumed to have gone off on some personal quest perhaps, being lost to the curse and simply having wandered out of the fortress to die in the wilderness with his shame. But the celebration swiftly turned sour when Holos revealed what he had been told atop the summit. For the angel had indeed proposed a way to liberate the chapter from the curse, but it was not to be a wholesome liberation. And this is where your forthcoming blood drinker's friend would undoubtedly begin to wind down the tale. The night is getting old, dawn is on the horizon, and it is no longer the time for tall tales of heroes and angels and monsters Xenos. The blood drinkers are strong, yet again. They are loyal sons of the Emperor and Sanguinius, and will fight against the forces of evil wherever they may rear their ugly heads. And is that not good enough? Is that not enough truth for one night? And to be fair, the blood drinker's excellent reputation is not a thing of accident or mere mischance. They have worked for it. They are truly some of Sanguinius' finest sons, and they have battled virtually every foe the Imperium has. They have fought the depraved Dark Eldar upon the hive world of Faust, where the monsters had infiltrated the planet and infected the local water supply with a poison that would inflict upon the innocent citizens of the world hallucinants and berserk rage and fury, paranoia and anger. The entire world was set to descend into a mass of roiling chaos, bloodshed, and violence. Only the blood drinkers had any hope of restoring order to the world before it descended into absolute, hopeless anarchy. A strike force struck into the heart of the high world, cornering and executing several of the Dark Eldar leaders, murdering countless of their warbands, and once that threat was dealt with, they turned upon the civilian populace to restore order to the desperate masses. It required sacrifices, to be sure, the numbers of slain Imperial citizens numbering in the tens of thousands, but the civilian populace was lost to an alien poison. Such casualties are nothing, and they would have been as if nothing compared to the damage inflicted on the Hive and on its populace had the Dark Eldar been allowed to roam freely. The blood drinkers were undoubtedly Faust's brave saviors. And not just mere civilians have had the honor of the chapter's aid either. The Crimson Fists received the much valued help of the blood drinkers chapter in reclaiming their homeworld from the Orc Warg that had overwhelmed it and almost destroyed it. Ren's world may not have been an Imperial world today were it not for the efforts of the blood drinkers. And then, of course, there is the chapter's perhaps finest deed to date. The brilliant defense of the planet Castobel, and more precisely, the hive city of Ibelus, against the innumerable billions of hive fleet Dagon. The blood-red armored Astartes arrived on the planet without any forward notice, and took up residence in the upper spires of Hive Ibelus. Undoubtedly, the chapter's astropaths, their psychers, and their strategists had determined the course of Hive Fleet Dagon, and decided upon the world of Castabel as the perfect place to break apart the fleet before it became a true threat to the Imperium. This was an incredibly courageous course of action, as even the stoutest Astartes chapter will think twice before placing itself in the path of a Tyranid splinter fleet, much less the full force of a Tyranid tendril. Unsurprisingly, when the monsters arrived from the deep darkness of the void, the other hive cities of Castabel fell swiftly, one after the other, unable to resist the numerous hordes that covered the plains for hundreds of kilometers in every direction outside of the hive cities. Their population torn apart and reduced to sludge to be fed up into the waiting bioship in orbit. But alone of all the hive cities, Ibelus, with its blood drinkers, held firm in the face of any and all violence the Tyranids could enact upon them. And as mighty as the god emperors Adeptus Astartes are, they were not alone the only factor in saving the hive. Oh, every blood drinker undoubtedly killed Tyranids by the thousands, if not tens of thousands. But it was their effect upon the hive's defenders that was the truly deciding factor. For fighting the Tyranid threat is a horrific proposition. Imagine standing even safe high upon the walls of a hive city, seeing an endless carpet of hostile creatures storming towards you every second of every minute of every hour of the day. Artillery blasting huge bloody trenches in the enemy and yet not slowing them for more than a heartbeat. You empty magazine after magazine after magazine into the horde, and it is like pissing into a hurricane. Absolutely futile, hopeless. Death is right there staring you in the face. Inevitable, inescapable, absolute death. And it will rend you apart with teeth and claw and bioweapons. It requires something special indeed to keep men's spines strong against such a foe. And the Blood Drinkers was just that very thing, striding across the battlefield like gods, like angels, wearing no helmets to display their physical perfection, their golden hair, the gift of their Primarch Sanguinius, swaying gently in the breeze. They were the absolute image of imperial heroes of myth, everything that it was to be a space marine, and not just a space marine, the noblest of all, the sons of the angel of Sanguinius. The men sang as they fought inevitable, inescapable death, and they never ran, they never broke, and they battled the Tyranid threat until victory, no matter how long that might take. But unfortunate rumors began to spread. Rumors of a new type of Tyranid bioform, or perhaps a weapon, an infiltrator, an agent, perhaps some as to yet unknown strain of lictor, perhaps, had clearly invaded the city. For whilst the defences remained strong, casualties began to mount inside of the city. Nothing in comparison to the active fighting, of course, but a handful of citizens here and there, civilians, or sometimes far more disturbingly, entire squads of guards patrolling the hive disappeared only to be discovered again later as corpses completely drained of all blood. Clearly, the Tyranid hive mind had come to the conclusion that the hive's defenses could not be broken by simple force of arms alone. As long as Ibellis was protected by the angels, it would have to find some other way. And clearly it had done so. Some form of chameleonic monster that snuck in during the night. Or a creature that fell from the sky, perhaps, on leathery wings. Who knows? As of yet, no example of this creature has yet been confirmed killed or hunted effectively, even as the corpses continue to appear. A mystery. A mystery indeed. Of course, some of the more recent actions of the Blood Drinkers, they were involved in the devastation of Baal, where amongst the other chapters, they of course received their own contingent of Primaris Marines. And during the Sanguinius Conclave, when Lord Commander Dante asked for fresh blood to be provided to the Blood Angels, the Blood Drinkers Chapter Master, the Honourable Orlok, voted in favour of providing the Blood Angels with some of his company's recruits. A dangerous decision, perhaps. Almost as dangerous as the acceptance of the Primaris Marines. But why dangerous? Well, you see, the Blood Drinkers have rituals. Now, that is not a rarity in and of itself. Many Astartes chapters have rituals, some far more extreme than others. Many verging on the very border of outright heresy. Some include blood ritual, the devouring of slain enemies, regardless of their nature. We have already talked about just one such chapter. Many of these rituals often draw the attention of the God Emperor's most holy Inquisition, and the Blood Drinkers ritual is... I think you can probably already guess it. The drinking of vast quantities of human vita, provided voluntarily, of course, by the chapter's serfs. It is, in fact, a great honor to provide blood to these rituals, and the Inquisition has thrown a sidelong glance at it or two. But the Blood Drinkers' history is impeccable, far more so than most of the founding chapters of the Blood Angels Legion. And so no true cause for concern has ever really arisen. Though some might point out that the extent of the rituals are kept a closely guarded secret. The fact that the Blood Drinkers engage in some form of ritualistic bloodletting and drinking of said blood, that is not a secret, but nor is it a secret that the Blood Angels do this. Unsurprisingly, the Blood Angels have quite a few rituals involving Vita. In fact, of course, one of the primary reasons why they are suffering from the flaw in the first place is the blood of Sanguinius, and there is nothing wrong at all about venerating the blood of a Primarch, least of all one like Sanguinius, of course. But if our forward and open blood drinker friend might be coaxed yet further in his tales, he might tell you about the return of Holos, the initial celebrations, and then the worsening mood, and the schism. The chapter had already been much reduced by their near brush with death and the curse. And yet those battle brothers that remained were ready to kill one another over the truths that Holos brought back to the chapter. The rites that he proposed, that the angel had bequeathed unto him, you see, were far beyond a little bit of bloodletting. It was far beyond a grail of blood being shared amongst an entire squad of brothers to renew their ancient oaths. And whilst most of the blood is indeed provided voluntarily, the blood drinker's rites go like this: blood given and blood taken. As one serf will be chosen amongst all the others to be ritualistically slaughtered against his will. For it is not that the blood drinkers are unusually resistant to the curse, the flaw, the black rage, or the red thirst. It is simply that they embrace it. And in a ritual taking place on the chapter's battle barges or within their chapter fortress monastery, they gorge themselves in blood provided by their serfs and the one unwilling victim. This is a strictly regulated ritual, where the battle brothers go unarmored, clothed only in simple tabards, and unarmed, except for the chapter's chaplain and a small group of sanguinary guards, all carrying their weapons in full armor should any brothers fall too far. Once the bloodletting is done, and the brothers have gorged themselves on the oceans of red life, they beg the Emperor's forgiveness. They beg each other's forgiveness, their Primarch's forgiveness for what they must do to maintain themselves. It is to them a cleansing ritual, horrific though it may be, the sacrifice of one mere serf every year or so surely is nothing in the grand scheme of things. How many millions, how many billions of citizens have the blood drinkers saved? How many worlds would have fallen to the great enemy, to the Tyranids, to the Orcs, if they had not done this? Would the Crimson Fists, another good, noble chapter, even exist today were it not for this ritual? Surely it cannot be wrong. And what little wrong there is, they have repented for it. Or have they? This is a truth that even our forthcoming battle brother would not be able to tell anyone outside the chapter. Not because he would not want to. There are perhaps, in fact, many within the chapter who would desperately wish to have this secret be known, but they do not know. It is a secret. The angel that Holos met atop that mountain peak at the very edge of death was not sanguineous, nor was it a manifestation of the God Emperor's mercy, or anything quite so wholesome. The creature was a demon. It came to Holos at the edge of his strength, at the end of his rope, when all hope had been riven from him, when all the future of his chapter had been taken from him, and it offered him a solution. And it didn't ask for much. In fact, it asked for next to nothing. It would not demand his chapter's soul. Of course not. They are the blood drinkers, an honorable, good chapter. No mere demon could ever corrupt their numbers. Of course not. He would not ask for Holos' soul, or his services, or any actions taken on behalf of the demon or the Chaos Gods. The demon asked for absolutely nothing but one small favor. A handful, a tiny fraction of the battle brothers that still fell prey to the black rage would see instead a different vision. Normally, when a battle brother falls, he sees himself as Sanguinius, fighting the last battle against Horus. But a tiny number of blood drinkers will instead see Holos atop the mountain conversing with the demon. And the demon will see them in turn. O Holos, Will you not accept my power? Will you not accept my strength? And so far, not a single battle brother has accepted. Out of the 18 who have fallen prey to the Black Rage, not a one has ever been tempted. And so the chapter remains pure, remains loyal. And the demon? He doesn't mind over much. One battle brother may deny him, 2, 3, 4, 5, 18 may deny him. Well, what about the 19th, the 20th, the 21st, hell, the 100th? It doesn't matter how long it takes. When one gives in, the entire chapter will be lost. And for that reward, to turn a loyal, noble, honorable, famous chapter to his Dark Master's designs, that is worth any amount of time, any amount of sacrificial pawns. For humanity is weak, transient. The demon is eternal, and it can wait forever. Until next time, I have been Arch. Thank you all very much for listening, and I hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.